Hello, everybody. Let's talk about The Unexpected Mermaid in this video. This is a video that I really should have done closer to January 20th when I released the 10th book in the Enchanted Forest series. The red glow is from my mic, and I haven't done it. Those of you who've been here long enough know that I will read the first chapter or a section of the first chapter during release week, and I haven't done it, and I really need to do it. And that red dot is bugging me, so I'm gonna turn the mic a little. I'm keeping this in, by the way. I'm keeping this in. So what is the Unexpected Mermaid? The Unexpected Mermaid is a reverse, gender swapped Little Mermaid. Interesting? Yeah, maybe. If you've read Enchanted Forest 2 through 9, you have, especially book 4, The Runaway Princess, you have seen references to the Maestro family, particularly Arya, who is supposed to turn into a mermaid, and her older brother Reed. Reed has been questing, much like Prince Henry in The Magic Beanstalk, for about 4 years trying to pass his quest. The difference between Henry and Reed is that Henry was not allowed to. Oops, spoiler alert for those who haven't read it and who have read 2 and 3 and 4. Reed has been trying. Arya has been trying for 2 years. People think they're twins because they look so much alike. They are not twins. People just think they are and never correct themselves. And you see that with a lot of the continuity errors that I purposely developed into the story, like Queen Gabrielle, misnaming Henry, Henry of Charmante's mother. I think it was Gabby, or in stuff like that. So, The Unexpected Mermaid, the back blurb. Can we just give a hand to my cover designer? I don't know how she did it. She just does it. Good job, Jen. Prince Rita Maestro has spent over 4 years trying to complete a single quest successfully. They have all failed spectacularly, but he can't give up. He's meant to be the future king of Maestro, right? One successful quest later, Reed emerges with an unexpected mermaid tale. This development easily throws Maestro and one of the mermaid kingdoms into chaos, because his sister was supposed to be the mermaid in the family. With treaties and betrothals falling apart, Reed finds himself floundering around with no clue how to manage what comes next. Will Reed learn how to be a mermaid, or end up insulting the mermaid royal family? Will his betrothal agreement with Winifred, the mermaid who is better suited to be human — yes, she is the Little Mermaid, I have not read her story yet — remain intact, or will he realize that there is somebody else better suited for his new role? Will he ever convince Crown Prince Kai that he is not trying to steal his throne? And even more importantly, will Reed ever successfully finish his 3 quests? When I started writing this, when I started planning these, Reed was supposed to marry Winifred. I did not expect the twist to happen until I started planning this. I had not finalized the title until halfway through this book. I did not decide that Reed and Winifred were not going to get married until the Goose Girl, when we see Prince Cord. That does not mean that Cord and Winifred will end up together. I did not say that. I haven't decided yet. Regardless, Cord still has his story, his happy ending to be told, and Winifred will have her happy ending as well. Whether it's the same happy ending, I don't know yet. That is a problem for me after the missing princess gets written. It just will be the last Enchanted Forest full story. Everything else will be short stories. Unless I get bored and decide to go ahead and write it. So, yeah. Even though it is. Doo-doo-doo, ba-dum, ba-dum, doop, ba-dum. Chapter 5, when Reed finds out that he's a mermaid, it still is what it is. So, without for without further ado, let's start with the author timeline. Author's timeline note: The Mermaid Kingdom and the Mermaid Song. The Mermaid Song. I have things to fix. Great. The Unexpected Mermaid and the Questing Princess take place around the same time as the Bewitched Tower, the Runaway Princess from the Wonderland Chronicles, the Charmante Chronicles, and the Roshan Chronicles. It is not necessary to read these stories before reading the Maestro Chronicles stories. Prince Cord's story began in the Roshan Chronicles, The Goose Girl, and will end by the conclusion of the Maestro Chronicles, but it's not necessary to read The Goose Girl unless readers want to experience Prince Cord's quests. The Chronicles are not done. The Chronicles will be done in Tales from the Enchanted Forest. That said, I now need to write a note about fixing the interior note. So, I'll be right back. You may hear my cat in the background. She's not very happy being locked out of the room. Chapter 1. The kingdom and Maestro did not like him. Whenever he did his princely duty, the land faltered. His quest never had been successful despite the tasks being done right. He always failed. It didn't make sense. The people loved Crown Prince Reed. He was popular and well liked wherever he went, regardless of the kingdom. Letting out a sigh, he once again packed up his supplies and slipped out of the kitchens before anybody else noticed he had gone. They were already in an uproar over his sister, Arya, disappearing the day before to attempt her quest once again. It made no sense that the 25-year-old prince and the 23-year-old princess had yet to complete any quests. In a few weeks, their little brother was going to have his 21st birthday, and Reed was curious how Cord would manage them. But he wasn't going to be there to witness Cord's quests. With luck, Cord would not be the first Maestro Royal of their generation to complete the quests. I think he was. He had slipped out of the castle countless times, each time hoping that this time it would be different. Drawing in a deep breath, Reed started his trek to the gates that would be his escape from the castle, and the stairs as people gossiped about his failures. He took small comfort in the knowledge that he was not Crown Princess Alice of Wonderland, who had never, not once, attempted to go on her quest. He had also recently become aware that Princess Grace of Wonderland had escaped her sister Shadow, and 2 years later than the norm, had started her quest. Last anyone had heard, Princess Grace had gone missing, but that wasn't unusual for a questing prince or princess. This time, he was determined to succeed, and he wasn't going to return to the Maestro Castle until he did. Reed didn't look back once he'd crossed the city gates. He'd done that before. But after doing it dozens of times in the past, he no longer felt homesick at the beginning of his journey. This time, he swore was going to be different. He just needed to figure out how to succeed for once. And this is a decently okay. After a few days' trek, Reed stumbled upon what would normally be considered his first quest, according to the guidelines he'd grown up studying. The plants around the farmhouse looked dry and dusty. There hadn't been any rain for months. The tilled fields weren't sprouting the green that was normally a regular sight during this time of year. Reed's canteen had been emptied the day before. He'd seen a dog that needed something to drink. The waxed bags, also used to hold water, were mostly empty. He needed to find a clean water source soon to refill everything. "Hello there," a voice called from a nearby fence. "You look familiar, but you aren't one of my neighbors." Giving a slight bow of his head, Reed introduced himself. "Prince Reed Maestro. Whom do I have the pleasure of speaking to?" "John Howard," the farmer introduced himself. "And there's no need to bow your head at me," the dirty farmer protested. "And please don't expect me to hold out a hand to shake. I'm covered in dirt." "Do you need any help?" Reed offered, loosening his language from formal to informal. "What do you know about fixing fences and digging wells?" John asked. "I've been helping farmers and herders for the past 4 years," Reed confessed. John looked around his farm. It wasn't much to look at, but there were what felt like a million tasks that needed to be completed. "And building barns?" "I've assisted in a few of those as well." John only nodded his head. He dropped his own act once, assured that Reed wasn't going to rob him. "I recently bought this farm. My older brother inherited our father's farm when father retired, but I didn't want to keep living on their property. My sister-in-law was constantly asking me when I was going to get married. Unfortunately, I always felt as if I needed to be settled before I started looking for the woman I wanted to court." He turned and pointed. "They live next door and would be willing to help me get everything up and running, but my brother has to run his own farm, and helping me would get him behind on his own chores. I don't need that type of animosity building up between us." "I understand. It's no different than with my siblings and me. Only Prince Cord is spoiled rotten, and nobody wants him running the kingdom," John blurted out before turning red. Quickly apologizing, he couldn't make eye contact. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that." Reed merely laughed. "No worries," he reassured the farmer. "Cord doesn't want to run a kingdom either." "That's a relief." Removing his pack from his shoulder, Reed asked, "Well, where do we need to get started? The well?" "That's probably a good idea." Top break. "I don't understand," Reed mumbled, running his hands in the dirt. "What was that?" John asked from above, where he was dumping the dirt Reed was digging up and shoveling into a bucket. "The ground is wet, but there's no water," Reed called up to the farmer. "That's normal," John reassured the prince. "Just a few more buckets and we'll let the ground do its thing." "Are we sure this is the right spot?" "It's where the water divining rod said to dig last week," John replied. "My father swears by his rods." Reed nodded his head. He had nothing to say. After a few more buckets of dirt, and using a rope to help Reed climb out of the 20-foot deep well, they started building a stone ring around the top of the well so that nobody would accidentally fall into the hole. "How long until it fills up?" Reed asked. "Shouldn't this be deeper?" "There's usually a river nearby," John pointed out. "Once it rains, everything will get back to normal. I feel like if I had dug the well any deeper, then when the river starts flowing again, the water table might overwhelm and destroy the well from the bottom up." "Has that happened before?" John pointed to the old well about 50 feet away. "I scaled down to check when I didn't pull up any water. It's a sinkhole waiting to happen." "You've been dumping the dirt from this well into that one, haven't you?" "Yep." "And the stones are from that well?" "Yes." "Smart," Reed stated. "Are we going to reinforce the inside of the well?" "Some of it," John replied. "I don't have enough stones to do all of it." Nodding his head, the prince grinned and stated, "Okay, well, let's get to it." They worked in relative silence, communicating only enough to keep things moving smoothly. Reed didn't want to think about the blisters forming on his already calloused hands, how difficult it had been to dig into the rocky ground. and the buckets of dirt he had accidentally dumped on his head. Nice. Sorry. Nearly a week later, the morning after the well had been finished, it hadn't started to fill up yet. Even though a feeling of disappointment filled Reed, he plastered on a cheerful face and suggested that they start working on the broken parts of the fence next. There were so many minor things that had happened that he didn't want to think about. But the niggling voice of doubt in the back of his mind was starting to get louder. John, having spent a week with Reed, asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know." Reed shook his head. "Maybe I thought the well would start filling up already." Shrugging, John said nothing. He didn't know what to say. Even he suspected Reed was helping him in hopes that a quest would be finished, and he had no qualms about using the Prince to get things done. Without a word, Reed snagged an axe and headed to the gap in the fence where they had met. He had spotted a few smaller trees that would work for fence posts and rails. "How many spots need repairing?" he asked before he started to chop down trees. "This one and the one on the other side of the field. It's a water gap." "Any idea how many posts and rails you'll need?" "One post and 4 rails for this fence," John quickly replied. He did some mental math, trying to calculate the larger gap. "I think 3 posts and 8 rails for the back fence." "I'll cut some extras," Reed stated, "just in case." He didn't waste any time chopping some smaller trees on the edge of the farm. John went to the fence and started removing the broken rails and posts. The scene felt slightly familiar. It's what he'd been doing before Prince Reed had joined him. As he worked, he flashed back to the few rocks he had almost lost his grip on while they were working on the well. He didn't want to admit that he had nearly dropped a stone on the Crown Prince's head. A crack caught their attention as a flash of lightning struck a nearby tree, bark flying everywhere. Reed stood there, stunned, as the shock of the situation left him temporarily paralyzed. "Reed?" John asked. Rain started pelting down on them. A few hailstones bounced on the ground. Unable to move, Reed stared at what remained of the tree next to him. He had been about to start chopping it down. "Reed!" John snapped. "We need to get inside." Shaking his head, Reed backed up a step. "No." "What?" Releasing the axe, he kept shaking his head. "It's my fault. I wasn't paying attention to the signs at the well." "What?" John froze in place. "I dropped a stone on my foot," Reed confessed. "It didn't hurt me because my boots were reinforced, but I didn't want to accept the sign. That's why the well isn't filling up as it should, because I'm not supposed to be here helping you." "But you are." "Because you needed help." Reed looked at John before adding, "But helping you isn't my quest." "Reed?" "Thank you for your friendship," he said, backing away. "Once my presence doesn't threaten your farm, I'll return to help out however I can." Almost the instant Reed stepped off of John's property, the rain stopped. The well started filling up faster than it should after the brief rain shower. Later, John would discover that a chicken in his back garden had hatched a chick and that his plants were starting to sprout. When John went to change the sheets on the bed Reed had used, he found a small bag of coins the Prince had left behind. In the bag was a note: "To pay for any damage my visit caused." Reed's just not having any luck, is he? It gets better. So, if you haven't already, and somebody has a lot, thank you. Please check out The Unexpected Mermaid, previously titled The Mermaid Kingdom. I've got some books to fix, unfortunately. With that, happy reading.